morning, and you are all very welcome to Scale Ireland's special All-Ireland webinar to mark International Women's Day, which is supported by Meta, Intertrade Ireland and Martinson Meyer. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Rona Toher, the CEO and founder of LIAS, which is an advanced acoustics materials company building technology to eradicate harmful noise damage. And Rona is also a very committed member of our steering group, and she will be co-chairing today's event. And Rona, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Martina. It's a pleasure to be here. I founded LIAS with my co-founder Emer over 10 years ago when we were still in secondary school. Our founder relationship has been our greatest source of strength, and we have come through all of the highs and lows of entrepreneurship together. Our ambition is to build LIAS into a global business that should have a significant impact on industry and society. But the importance of empowering other women and underrepresented groups to enter entrepreneurship and tech is a deep-seated belief of ours. There are too few female founders and even fewer teams made up of only women. These teams can lack financial and mentoring support, and that needs to change for them to succeed.
Now, with that in mind, Rona, I think it's very important that the theme of today's event is called Supporting Women in Startups. And that's very important. Why? Well, a Tech Ireland report last year found that for the first time, startups led by female founders raised 105 million euro in 2020, 105 million in 2020. And that's the good news. However, just 16% of startups here have a female founder. And we conducted a survey, State of the Startups survey earlier this year, and 230 founders and CEOs participated and responded. And over half of the startups either have a female founder at the moment or a female member of their senior leadership team. And that is very much reflected in our panel today.
The survey also found that most founders believed increasing the visibility of women in the sector would be critical to increasing diversity in the startup ecosystem, as well as mentoring, networking opportunities, and state supports. So we are delighted to have a terrific panel of female leaders in the sector to discuss how we can support women in startups and to share their advice and ideas.
And that is what today is about. So let's get down to business and introduce our guest speakers. We are delighted to be joined today by Sandra Healy, the founder of Inclusio, which is a science-based, data-driven diversity and inclusion platform designed to measure and enhance company culture. We're also delighted to be joined by Michelle McDade, the Senior Director of Engineering at WorkHuman, which of course is the leading employee recognition and continuous performance development platform. And of course, it's one of Ireland's tech unicorns.
Next, of course, we all know Mary McKenna, a co-founder of the Awaken Hub in Derry. She is also a Donegal-based serial tech entrepreneur and angel investor. And Raydeen O'Connor, the head of community at the RDI Hub in Kerry, who leads their Founders Circle. And of course, she's also a key partner of Scale Ireland.
And also Raydeen and Mary are very good supporters of our International Women's Day event last year, of course. We hosted it all together. So you are very welcome today. We're also joined by Aoife Nawuri, who is a Kerry-based, a chartered physiotherapist and the founder of Solaso Health Solutions Limited, lovely name for a company. And that is a health technology company developing digital therapy solutions.
And finally, we are joined by Heather Bruton, a postgraduate student at Trinity College in Dublin and the co-founder of UniPeer, which is a college-wide platform that connects students based on their shared experiences and interests.
So we're going to start with Sandra. And Sandra, I suppose, can you tell us about your company, which is focused on diversity and also your own experiences as a founder?
Thank you and good morning. I'm delighted to be here and on such an esteemed panel this morning. So yeah, just very briefly, I suppose, just to give you a little bit of background on where Inclusio came from. So I spent 20 years in the telecoms industry, working across the UK and Ireland before I went into Dublin City University for 5 years to lead out on equality, diversity and inclusion for the university. I had been leading in diversity and inclusion while I was in the tech industry. And one of the things I realized is that there was a lack of evidence around diversity and inclusion. So on one side of the work I was doing, so sales and customer delivery and customer experience, I had really clear KPIs. And yet here I was doing this very meaningful work in diversity and inclusion with no way to evidence the impact to the business. So that's what got me thinking that there has to be a better way to do this. And at the same time, I was studying organizational psychology in DCU. So I was learning that there's lots of science behind this. So in my conversations going into DCU, I said, look, I want to build this technology platform. I had 10 slides at the time and an idea in my head. And I said, I want to build it. Is there an opportunity for me to do this when I come into the university? And they said, absolutely. We have Enterprise Ireland commercialisation funding. So that's what I did. Martina was spun into the university and over 4 years in research and development, brought on 2 co-founders, and we spun out on the 20th of December 2020 into a COVID world. And how we described what we do is we combine technology, psychology, and artificial intelligence to bring a scientific, evidence-based approach to diversity and inclusion measurement and learning. And essentially what we do is provide leaders in the organization with the ability to know what's happening on the ground right across the company. Interestingly, when we designed the software, we built it for a distributed workforce based on one of our trial partners, which is Sodexo. And interestingly, then we brought it out into a world where now everybody is distributed. And our ambition is to be the global solution for transparency, fairness, and equitability across all workplaces in the world.
And can I just say that given your authority in the diversity inclusion space, you had an extensive pilot program even before you hit market, down to your own credibility in the sector.
That's right, Martina. Yeah.
Now, Michelle, at a time when the sector is crying out for highly skilled workers in STEM, you are a senior director of engineering at one of the country's most successful startups. Can you tell us about your journey and decision to work in what is a male-dominated area, engineering?
Thanks. Yeah, I started out in AIB, International Banking Services, in a business environment and worked in the roles were probably less well-defined back then. So I worked in testing and business analyst roles. And whenever I was working with software engineers, I was always getting feedback that maybe my skills were suited to engineering. I had never really considered this. So I looked into it and I did an aptitude test, and the results were great, and I was offered a role in technology. I started out at level 0 in career path, and maybe what I would say now looking back is that my business domain knowledge it dealt with a gap that was in the team, which maybe should be considered when you move between different areas into technology. I think that it's really important that we do have that diverse background and people from different skill sets, because it brings a lot more to the team. Within WorkHuman, we've got 24 different nationalities in our Ireland base. And just on that note, I'd like to just show solidarity and support to our colleagues in Ukraine and those in Belarus as well that have moved away into Ukraine to get away from the political situation there. I think that girls in school can be put off STEM subjects. Sometimes the role that they may end up in mightn't even be dreamed up yet. I think it's great that there's such a broad range of different roles that you can take on. One thought I have on it though is that if you are a woman and want to be a software engineer, you can be swayed away from it because of being good at doing other stuff. So just to really follow your path. I don't think when I moved into technology, I considered the fact that it was male dominated. Now looking back, I can see that at many times I had to fight bias. It would from things like where my perspective was questioned more than my male colleagues, where ideas that I shared, maybe the credit was given to the man who repeated it. I was underestimated many times and underpaid. And I think that a lot of the time women are told that they should be more visible, but they don't have a seat at the table. So it's hard sometimes to be as visible. And I think that does chip away at your confidence as a woman in a male dominated industry, and we need to be considerate as leaders. I do my best now to make sure that the work environment is as inclusive as possible for those that come behind me. And being asked to speak on things like this, I would have run away from in the past. And I kind of feel now that it's my duty as a woman in technology to tell the story and to help encourage others.
And thank you, Michelle. Some of the themes you raised there will be of
Mm.
interest to other women, not just in this sector, but in other sectors as well. Now, who better to talk to us today about supporting women in startups than Mary McKenna, the founder of Awaken Hub in Derry, which is focused on investing in female entrepreneurs. And Mary, I suppose, can you tell us about your own work with the Awaken Hub, which is a great initiative, and then your own journey within the sector as well?
Good morning, Martina and Rona and colleagues. It's really lovely to see you all at the beginning of March and the start of International Women's Day 2022. So I suppose what I would sort of say first of all is, as people probably know, I'm an exited technology entrepreneur, but as soon as my business was sold, the minute my business was sold, I started investing, and I angel invest in early stage female founding teams. So the teams that Rona mentioned earlier, the 8% that come through the EU that are all female founding teams, they're my tribe. They're the ones that I look to support. And there are three things that I invest against: women founding teams that have a tech for good product where I can add value to it. So I'm very clear about how I am going to actually use some of my wealth to help others get started. And I think that the situation for women founders will never actually really significantly improve until women start backing other women with their own money and start actually financially supporting other women that are starting businesses. And then, Martina, moving on to Awaken Hub, I'm one of 4 co-founders. The other 3 are all Irish women as well. And we started in July 2020 because we believe that women, because of things that colleagues on the call have already mentioned around confidence and things like this, women do need specific communities that are women founded and women populated, where they can get advice that's very specific to their own particular needs. We've been really happy with the growth that we've seen in our community, which is now about 1,800 women founders. We've started a light touch, high impact Island of Ireland accelerator called She Generate that completes next month, end of April, which 56 women from 23 Irish counties are currently going through. And yesterday we announced Mary Ann Pearce as our first ever global diaspora ambassador, so that Mary Ann can start bringing in all those fantastic women that we know overseas that are Irish or are Irish connected, and that they can come in and start helping our founders here on the island to get started in places like the US that they would like to. And that's my small introduction there, Martina. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you, Mary.
Mary, you sound like a powerhouse. So Radine, you are the head of community at the RDI Hub in Kerry and a key partner of Scale Ireland. So can you tell us about your work with female founders and your own experience in the sector?
Yep, sure. Thank you for having me this morning, folks, and great to be here with a super panel. So like you said, Rona, I'm heading up the community in RDI Hub. And for those of you who don't know RDI Hub, we're home to NDRC in the Southwest, STEM Passport, which is supporting girls in Dutch schools get access and experience with in STEM, and home to 20 national and international startups who have relocated from all around the world to scale from Kerry. The aim of the RDI Hub was to create the Fexcos of the future. And when I say that, I don't mean just fintech. I'm talking about scaling international tech companies that will help the region flourish. And so what we do really is kind of help founders, tech founders who are struggling. And tech founders, as everybody here knows, struggle for lots of reasons, but a couple of the really common ones are they don't know the right people. It's tough to get access to funding, and a lot of founders are kind of journeying alone. So we bring together communities of mentors, experts, innovators who can kind of open the right doors and help founders kind of get access to the supports they need. My job on a day-to-day basis is to connect founders with people who they wouldn't normally meet, potential co-founders, investors, advisors, tech partners, beta customers, all that kind of stuff. I also curate the largest tech founder networking event, Founder Circle, with in Association Scale Ireland. And that's a day of mentoring and workshops and, you know, all that kind of stuff that's really important. Founders coming together to share knowledge about the journey. And Founder Circle is 32% of the founders on Founder Circle are female. And it was a couple of things that we've mentioned already today that I have seen from Founders Circle, really, and working with founders. Access to funding in the last 2 years in the startup world, like investment in startups has been record smashing, amazing. You know, valuations are through the roof. We know all this, right? But funding in minority and female-led startups is shockingly low. And Mary is right in what she's saying. We need to be really intentional about what we're going to do about it. If you look at Crunchbase's diversity spotlight, they're doing a feature to shine a light on the inequality in VC funding, and solely female-founded companies got only 2.2% of them got venture funding for the first 8 months of 2021. So just 2.2%. And to put that into context, that's a lower share than any of the previous 5 years. So it's not getting better, it's actually getting worse. So what Mary's right, like there needs to be really intentional interventions. And I suppose one of the interventions, you know, it doesn't always have to be state. There's I don't know, does anyone follow Lita Tubb on Twitter? Yeah, she's excellent, right? She has a matchmaking tool where basically if you're an underrepresented founder, plug into her matchmaking tool and she has a list of VC funds that want to actively are engaging and supporting underrepresented founders. So I'm going to drop her handle in the chat. So that was the key thing. And then I suppose the second thing I've noticed really is yes, thank you. Good woman, Mary. The second thing I suppose I want to mention is the network gap. When I ask male founders about their first whip around round, it's always network. And it's really touching on what Mary talked about. Female founders tend to go, in my experience of talking to them, a more traditional route, which is a hell of a lot harder. And if you want to get a network in Ireland that you don't already have, there's a couple of ways you can do it. Awaken Hub, the Irish Tech Hub Network. Get involved in your hub locally, like Portishead, Dogpatch, ourselves in Kerry, or more Bats in Belfast, Ludgate in Skibbereen. Like they are all recruiting and supporting startups, and they're meccas for VCs and for communities, and just access them and use them. And so they're the two things, access to funding and the network, that I think are really so much harder for women.
And to be honest, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with you. And it's so important that they have the supports and that we also acknowledge the issue and then try to do everything we can and bring that together as a community. We're now moving to Aoife, who is a female founder, who is one of those minority founders in the sector. Aoife, can I ask you why you decided to set up your company and the work that you're doing? And you have expanded recently. Isn't that right?
That's right, Martina. And first of all, thanks very much for the opportunity to participate in a great session and great event. Actually, you mentioned their company name at the start. Salasso Health is the company, and Salasso is actually a combination of salud, being the Spanish for fit and healthy, and Iaso is the Greek goddess of return to healing and recuperation. So to just give you a little bit of background, I set up the company. My own background is I'm a chartered physiotherapist, a big believer in the benefits of exercise, physiotherapy and therapy services for prevention of injury, for maintaining health and well-being, and for recovery from injury, disease, conditions, and so on. And very, very much about empowering people and educating people to help themselves. And I worked in clinical practice for many years, and my practice was very much based around supporting patients to understand what they could do for themselves. Effectively, I suppose, the drive now is towards consumer-driven healthcare, but we started about 10 years ago. It was probably in the very early stages of that sort of drive, and it's now very much taken off in terms of that approach. So I suppose the drive for me to start it up was, you know, I really felt there was a better way. I was lucky enough to be working as an academic lecturer at the Munster Technological University. Back then it was the Institute of Technology in Tralee. And seeing the benefits of multimedia and technology in a different industry, i.e. in education. And, you know, we were lucky enough in Tralee in the noughties to lead a number of national projects for the National Digital Learning Repository, as it was then, to support students in online education. And way before COVID, I might add, ahead of the time a little bit, but really seeing the benefits of technology to engage people with content and to support learning. It was very much, why can't we take this approach and bring it into the different industry, the healthcare industry, to support people in understanding how they can empower themselves, or how you can empower the patient to manage their own health. And it's been a very, very interesting journey. I think the last 2 years since COVID, you know, the digital revolution has really taken off, and every business, not just in healthcare, but across different sectors, you see digital transformation, digital reinvention. And I think, you know, at Solaso, we're a health technology company, and we're in a great position now because we have a platform that is very much about engaging people with therapy services and supporting our customers. So we're a B2B, and we support hospitals and health systems in developing we enable them effectively to develop powerful digital channels for their services. So I think it's a very exciting time actually to be in digital, in technology, and particularly, as I said, with all of the digital change and transformation that's taking place. It's great opportunities, and I suppose we consider ourselves very lucky that, you know, we've been around. We have a product and we have a platform that's well developed, and we're in prime position to sort of catch the wave, I guess, of that digital revolution.
And I was going to say to Rona, not only do you have a beautiful sounding name, but there's a beautiful meaning behind it. So, and what you do.
And a female focused one as well, Martina, which is very good for today.
You're ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, I think all of the panelists today are very mission driven in what they're working on. And finally, this morning, we're going to hear from Aoife, or from Heather, sorry, the youngest person on our panel today, and still in university, where many founders like myself began their brave journey. Can you tell us a little bit more about the company and how it came about?
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for the question and for including me on this great panel today. To tell you a bit more about myself and UniPeer, UniPeer is a college-wide platform that connects students based on shared experiences and interests. Myself and my two co-founders were in our final year of our undergraduate degrees when we founded UniPeer in the midst of the pandemic. We were all feeling quite isolated and disconnected from the college community, and decided we wanted to do something about it. So from our own survey of university students, we found that 66% of students have experienced loneliness, and adding to that, 91% of students said that they'd like to meet more people in their college community. So we knew there was a, you know, social connectivity issue there. And even though the pandemic definitely amplified these feelings of isolation, student loneliness is not a new issue. So yeah, our aim with UniPeer is to help students feel a sense of belonging at their universities. Students with a strong sense of belonging are not only less likely to report mental health issues, they're also more likely to stay on and graduate. One thing that's been unique about my entrepreneurial journey in general, and for anyone who decided to set up a startup during the pandemic, is that I've experienced most of it from my desk at home. So it's been strange to first encounter the Irish startup ecosystem through, you know, Zoom and LinkedIn and email. But, you know, this has been challenging, I guess. Organic networking just kind of wasn't a thing. But it also had advantages like being able to connect with people from all over the world, which has been really great. So yeah, we worked on UniPeer for several months before developing our first pitch deck. And we were incredibly lucky to win a spot on Tangent's accelerator program Launchbox based out of Trinity last summer. So we received invaluable mentorship, resources and guidance on how to launch a business, which was great. And we got to spend 3 months working full time on UniPeer, which really propelled our startup and allowed us to launch the beta version of the UniPeer app last September. And we had a really great initial launch, especially amongst first year students, which was great to see. I did have a bit of a shock when I started my master's, though. Working on a startup part-time isn't easy, I will say. It's definitely a balancing act, and sometimes it can be quite overwhelming, but we really enjoy what we're doing, and it's great to see such a positive reaction from students around us. And just to tell you what we're doing at the moment, we're developing some new features for the app, and we're working towards our next launch. So yeah, it's all really exciting here at the moment. Thanks for letting me speak.
And continued success to you and fair dues to you, because starting a master's and doing that at the same time. Rona, I know you also doubled at the same time in university. Now, one of the reasons that we host this event is that we're committed to it and giving female founders a platform, because increasing the visibility of women was identified in our recent survey as one of the main ways to increase diversity in the eco sector. Followed by mentoring, networking, as Radine mentioned, and state supports. Now, we're going to ask each of our panelists today, and we're delighted to have them on, what would they see as the main way of encouraging more women to either found a company, a startup, or to work in a startup? What would be a game changer for them? And I think that's really an important question, because we want to come up with solutions.
Sandra, can you start us off with your view?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question, and I've taken some time to think about it. And I suppose there's two sides to it, really. One is about working in a startup, and the other is starting a startup. What I would say about working in a startup, certainly it's been my experience that it's very rewarding. I think the perception is not the reality quite often. I think the perception is that working in a startup, it can be long hours and be a struggling type environment. It certainly is my experience. And I think it would be good, I suppose, for people to explore that, particularly if you're thinking of starting your own business. What a better place to learn and build your networks than in another startup. I would say it's rewarding. There's a lot of flexibility. It's meaningful work. I think a few of the panelists have mentioned today about the meaningful work. Certainly that's been my experience, and you get to use all your skills. That's another thing there isn't any skill that I've learned throughout my working life that I don't put to good use every single day. So from an engaging perspective and a challenging environment, I would have to say a startup environment is a wonderful place to be. That's my experience. In when it comes to starting up, I do some talks. I did one last week, and one of the questions I was asked is about fear of failure. You know, and when I was asked that question, like everybody has that. It doesn't matter who you are, right? You know, and I said to them, but what if it doesn't? Like, that can be even scarier. If it doesn't fail, you have a whole load of work to do ahead of you. You need a well-formed plan. So, you know, you don't really have a whole load of time to think about what if it fails, because you're focused for most of it on building the plan, the well-formed plan for success. So I think that would be my advice, I would say, is, you know, make sure that you spend as much time planning on what if it doesn't fail when you think about moving into startup.
And very sound advice. Michelle, moving to you, what would you see as the main way of encouraging more women either working in startups or founding one?
Yeah, my experience is working in a startup, so it'll probably focus on that. I do think visibility is a really key contributor to diversity. And one of the draws of WorkHuman for me was the culture of belonging and inclusion. And our product actually enables you to make everybody's work more visible through the power of social recognition. That said, we know from our data that men receive less awards than women, but to higher value. I'm often the only woman in the room, and sometimes there's no woman in the room. And I do think it's really important that we seek to have a diverse group of people when we're creating a product for a world that has 50% of women. And I think it's really important to know that technology was not always as male dominated. And in the past, there was a lot more women involved. The first software engineer was a woman, Margaret Hamilton. And I've written a few topics on this along a few articles on the topic of you cannot be what you cannot see. So I think it's really important that we do increase the visibility. And I think we need to tell more of the stories of those women that were involved before. And women do leave tech, but not the workforce. And that can be around not valuing their work and not being listened to, not feeling that they're listened to. So sponsorship and advocacy is really, really important. So what do I think is a game changer? I think that having goals and transparency around our gender and all forms of diversity metrics is really important. I think we need to ask ourselves who is not at the table and whose voice is not being heard. And also increasing trust and psychological safety so that, and listening to feedback, but enabling more flexibility. And that helps both men and women. I'm also conscious that we tell the women what they need to change rather than changing the system. So my advice to people leaders is look at your culture, and also when you're creating a startup, you have the opportunity to create the culture, and what way you operate will actually define your culture. And for people to understand their values and their strengths. As a person, you need to know, you need to not be depending on others seeing what you can do. You need to make yourself visible as well. And that can be building relationships with key senior leaders in a company, and taking that time to invest in those relationships, and choosing the culture that matches your values.
I think you've mentioned culture a few times today. It's also important in terms of visibility that we have someone of your seniority in engineering in a company like WorkHuman here with us today. So thanks very much for that, Michelle.
Mary, what do you think would encourage more women into startups?
I'm too surprised by the fact that Sandra Healy seems to be my twin that I've never actually met, for all the things that she just said then, you know. So I worked in 2 startups that belonged to other people before I started my own. That's great advice. Go and get some experience, because there's a lot that you need to learn. But get it on somebody else's dollar. You know, don't pay for those mistakes yourself. Go and learn, let somebody else pay for it. And then about culture. So the culture that Michelle has just mentioned, the reason that I started my own business was because I wanted to have a culture where people really enjoyed coming to work in the morning and they could have a fantastic career path and whatever. And to be honest, I'd worked for a lot of really mediocre men in my life previously. And one day I just thought to myself, you know, I could do this. What's stopping me? So I do think that there is a lot about having the confidence and belief in yourself to be able to actually go and have a go. The upside of having a successful startup so outweighs all the downsides of the imposter syndrome and everything else that you think about. You know, the highs of that roller coaster ride are so rewarding and whatever, that you really, you know, you shouldn't let that fear of failure hold you back. And I guess I would just say to you, you know, if you're thinking about it, go and find your tribe, join Radine at RDI or any of the other NDRCs, or come and join us at Awaken Hub. You know, the reason that we're out there is we're out there because we do want to help the people that are coming, for some of us coming after us, and always ask for help. There's hardly anybody that ever says no. I think one person has said no to me. I won't name and shame them, but you know, there was one person. But I asked for help from hundreds, if not thousands, and the others all said yes. So, you know, it's an encouraging space to be in the startup ecosystem. So jump in, don't stop.
I'd imagine, Mary, it's very hard to say no to you. To be honest, anyone who knows Mary is formidable, but in a very positive way, I'd like to hasten to add. Okay, Heather, we're going to jump to you at this stage and turn it around a little bit. What do you think would be a game changer for, you know, people who are in your master's class or in college, or, you know, women in general to work in a startup or to set one up?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really great question, and there's been a lot of great answers already. I guess from my perspective, I feel like the younger we start talking about and encouraging women and girls to get involved in entrepreneurship and STEM, the better. In college, my eyes have been open to the startup world through mentorship programs and society events and talks with founders and that kind of thing. But I kind of think that we need to be encouraging this kind of thinking at a school age. I think we need to be actively creating opportunities for girls and women to engage in the entrepreneurial and tech world. from a young age at school and at university. And we need to be making these opportunities loud and accessible and visible for everyone. It wasn't until I got onto the Launchbox Accelerator program that I finally had enough confidence to be like, okay, wow, like Unipeer, maybe it is a good idea and it really could go somewhere. And I think it would be nice if women could think and believe that their ideas are valid and important without that outside affirmation. So yeah, I think the game changer is really just like reaching out as much as possible to young people, encouraging them to get involved in startups and in entrepreneurship and innovation and everything.
That's great. And I really would agree with that too. You know, once you're out there, you can believe in it more when everyone else is believing in it with you. Aoife, what do you think? What would be a game changer from your perspective with all of your experience?
It's a very interesting question. You know, thinking back to what the other panelists have said and so on, I think having that increased visibility of women in startups and women in tech and so on, and you know, thinking of reflecting on this over the weekend, I was sort of thinking, you know, if we move the conversation to innovation, and you know, if you look at innovation today, every company is looking for innovation. So all of the, you know, the McKinsey reports and so on, all the big, you know, the big tech companies, they're looking to have that innovative mindset and to keep that agile, innovative approach. And bring out new products and so on. And technology is moving so fast that you know, the innovation arm and the R&D arm is quite critical. But if you look at the benefits of diversity then in innovation, if we, you know, I suppose that's where I'd like to move it to, that the conversation becomes about the importance of diversity to drive true innovation. Then it's about how can we increase diversity, you know, in whether it's at the top tier level, whether it's in the R&D teams, or you know, whether it's right through your workforce. And you know, diversity of, you know, of gender, diversity of ethnicity, of, you know, ability, disability, and so on. I think that approach and that mindset and the conversation needs to move to the importance of diversity to drive innovation, because every company wants innovation. Innovation and being innovative is what will keep you competitive, what will keep you ahead, and what will help you win. So I suppose that's the way I would come at it and see, can we really drive the importance of diversity to deliver innovation as a conversation, and as a point of view.
And finally, on this point, and it is difficult coming after all of that advice, but no better woman than Radine. Radine, what advice would you give to us, or what would you identify as a game changer to increase the numbers of women either working in or starting a startup?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I get to spend all day working with founders, right? And there's no such thing as a mediocre female founder. And that starts from a very early stage. So we run a thing called STEM Passport with Maynooth and Accenture and Microsoft in RDI Hub. And it basically is introducing girls from jet schools to things like design thinking, Python, all that kind of stuff, in a very like hands-on way, not in a theoretical. And then they form groups and present back their startup pitch, right? And that is always a highlight of my week, because the talent is there. And when they start to get that like hands-on experience around Python and stuff, they realize it's all problem solving, and we're really good at that. And that can be lovely, because you hear them going out the door going, engineering is actually not off my, it's not on my CEO previously, but it potentially is in the future. And that kind of tangible exposure is huge, right? I think can really transform the pathway you choose. So there, programs like STEM Passport is really, really important. I think there's some fundamental things that are changing before our eyes. Like I run a thing on the side called Creative Circle, which is similar to Founder Circle, but for creatives. And the interesting thing there is it's 70% female participation, right? Naturally. And many of these creative entrepreneurs are forced entrepreneurs, right? So they operate because they want to kind of do their classes and maybe have it as a side hustle so that they could keep plugging away at their art, right? But you're seeing these things like the streaming platforms, no code solutions to build out their programs, and NFTs are shifting what could have been kind of that side hustle into a fairly significant scaling business And I think that creative industries actually could be the thing that would be our anomaly when it comes to female founders. And that's one that I'm really interested in watching.
Okay, and thank you for that, Radine. To be honest, everybody has given really practical, steer on what they would see as a game changer, which we'll take on board as an organization. And now it's the advice time.
Yes, Sandra, let's start with you. What is your advice to women who are considering setting up a startup or working in the sector?
Yeah, I think three key things. So the first one I would say is build your network. And it's never too early to build your network. Like even from my own perspective, I started my career in the UK. I came back to Ireland. I had to start all over again, but I very deliberately put a lot of time and effort into building my network, and being helpful to others whenever I could. And I have to say that has really paid dividends to me now when I'm in an environment where I need support and from others. So that would be the first thing. Never, always prioritize and make conscious effort to build your network, no matter what stage of your career you're at. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing I would say, and it was something that Mary mentioned, ask for what you need. When you're a startup, it's different than being in a company, where I had a Vodafone badge on or a DCU. I don't have a badge that people recognize. So you need to be very conscious and asking people what you need. And if I think for Inclusio, our first customers, we had RSA Insurance, we had AMCK Aviation, we had Sodexo, Allianz, PayPal. So all of those companies and the people in them came on board and are with us today. And that for us, that was really, really important. So, and that came from the networking. And the last piece, and I think everybody's mentioned it today, is find the investors and the agencies and the people that welcome you. There's no point in pushing against the machine. I think Radine said it, and Mary describes it as her tribe. And Mary, I don't know how I haven't come across Awaken Hub either. We have to catch up. But I think, look, we're smart people, right? You figure out very quickly whether you're in a welcoming environment or not, and that's certainly something that I had to learn through my 40 presentations to get funded. Can I just say last year? And it's something that I've learned. So if I had one piece of advice for myself through all of that, I would say move on quicker to some of them, right? So that's the advice I'm saying. So find your tribe, find the environment, find the investors, for example, Atlantic Bridge, Oyster, Wake Up Capital. There's lots of agencies out there like Enterprise Ireland and Scale Ireland that welcome female founders. So go where you're welcomed and where you'll be supported. Really, really important.
And you're a good advertisement for that and for the work you've done and the pitches you've done over the last year. Michelle, what advice would you give to a woman who wanted to work in your company or who wanted to set up a startup? What advice would you give her in the morning?
Yeah, I guess I've mentioned culture already. I think it's really important. It's why a lot of women leave. I think that our attitude to failure is really important as well. And I think that we tolerate failure from men, but not women. Sometimes women are underestimated, and then if they fail, it's kind of proof that that was correct. So just having a healthier relationship with experimentation and how we look at failure. I mentioned investing in relationships. I think what Sandra mentioned about building your network, I love the idea of a personal board, because there's different people who can help you at different times, and you can help people, but it's building that group of people, that support network. And I think that's one of the things that we need to, in companies, if we have women or underrepresented groups, making sure that we help them to build that support network. So we have a Women and Allies ERG, Employee Resource Group in WorkHuman, which is open to all genders. But we also have a Women in Technology group that is just for women, and it's a safe space to ask questions, raise issues. And I think that's really important. We all know that we achieve better outcomes when we have diverse groups. But why is it still so slow that the change is happening, on diversity? So I think from a leadership perspective, we really need to double down on this. And I think people leaders need to understand that confidence and competence are not the same thing, and understand that women undersell themselves in their CVs. So if you're trying to build a more diverse workforce, you need to take time to find the women. It's not, and if you say that you need to do it, you're trying to recruit somebody in a very short time space, you will be saying no to diversity.
By the way, I just want to say competence and confidence are not the same thing. I think we can all take that home. That's a very good point of view. And I think most women will identify with that.
Yes, absolutely. And I would definitely be lost without my network of women that I have in my life who are in the same space as me in their career. And we share an awful lot. And I don't know if we would have gotten as far without each other. Mary, I'm sure you have a lot of advice that you can give to women out there who are looking to set up their startups.
Yeah, but a lot of it's been covered already, Rona, I would say. You know, the fake it till you make it is very real. And all of you will see this as you go through recruitment of your teams. You know, the different ways that men and women interview is, you know, is astounding. And you have to, it is your duty as a founding CEO to bring that diverse voice into your organization. Otherwise, you will not have a great culture and you will probably fail. So you need to really think about how you interview and how you recruit. I'm going to be like a broken record here and just go back to the whole network thing. It is so important. You know, if you're sitting on this call today and you don't have a network and you've no idea where to start, Kelly Hoey's book, Build Your Dream Network, is not a bad place to start. You know, pick up a copy and read it and act upon it. Because as they say, you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but if you didn't do that, then start today. The most heartbreaking thing I ever hear is a female founder saying to me, I understand how important networking is, but I just don't have time. You know, you have to make the time because it's going to save you so much other time in the future. So that's my really big number one tip, is to, you know, pay attention to your network and really put the effort in. We're all out there. The reason that we're there is to help you.
Okay, and moving on to Heather. Heather, what would your perspective be on this? You're coming from it from a different angle, just starting your first company.
Yeah, so based on my experience, I think getting involved in incubator programs and pitch competitions are a great way to learn about running a startup, especially because they kind of force you to push your idea forward and develop it into a business. They also expand your network, which is kind of repeating what everyone's been saying, but I think that's particularly important if you're starting out while still in college like I did and you just don't really know where to begin. And I think because a startup, it just isn't something that you can do by yourself. So building a strong team around you is, in my eyes, the most important thing. And I'm really lucky to have that and to have some incredible mentors as well. So yeah, I think that would be just my main advice to any aspiring young entrepreneurs.
It really does, Cole, come back to people and everyone that's around you. Aoife, what would you say to anyone looking to set up a startup today?
A lot of it, again, you know, would agree with a lot of what the other panelists have said. I suppose one piece of advice that I was given in the early stages that really stuck with me was, you know, as a startup founder, and you know, typically you're founding a business because you're passionate about something, and you know, it is your passion, and you're really driving to, whether it's build a product or whatever it is, but that it's very important to work on your business, you know, as well as in your business. And you know, I suppose that was something that for me, you know, my background was as a physio. I didn't have, you know, an accountancy degree. I'd never been on a board of a business before. You know, understanding how to run a company, understanding how to set up a board, understanding how to deal with the board, and so on. That there was a huge learning in that for me. And I suppose, again, having good people that you can go to for advice that can help you learn that and help you structure it in a way that works for your business. Again, you know, it's probably where you're very much out of your comfort zone, particularly in the initial stages, but you really have to push yourself, because that's a very, very important part of building your business.
Mm-hmm. And finally, to Radine, on this, what advice would you impart? I mean, obviously, you work with female founders every day, and also the Founder Circle. If anyone hasn't taken part in that, it is a phenomenal success, and in due in part to Radine. So, Radine, what advice would you give to the female founders?
I think if you're a female founder, there's some really interesting ones that have come up recently that have gone through that NDRC program. So starting at a founder circle or founders weekend, NDRC founder weekend, been 2 days, lots of mentoring, lots of support. That goes into the pre-accelerator. I'm thinking of the Riley gang, who are just a joy to watch as they're kind of flourishing at the moment. I keep going back to you need, someone said personal board today. Like for me, Awaken Hub, from a community point of view, will take you through the dark days as well as the bright ones. So like having that support is really important. So get involved. Like I know that Mary has talked me down off a ledge a couple of times, which is always important. So getting a tribe, getting a community, accessing the NDRC, they have had 50% participation rates and mentoring and in programs. Those programs are not seen as a success without that high participation rates. So get involved in NDRC. And if anyone's stuck, just email me. Mary's right. Like, we never say no. I will make the time. I'll drop my email in the chat, and follow Lolita. I'm a little obsessed with her at the moment.
By the way, I meant to say that we are being hosted here in Dogpatch Labs today, of course, which runs the NDRC. And I suppose you do have to find your tribe and those who are supportive. We have a question that we do have time for. Rona, would you like to read it out there?
Sure, it's from Quiva Donnelly. I would love to know how everything works if your co-founder is male. I'm finding that because it's not an all-female team, that we're being excluded from female-focused funding. But by not being all male, we're not being welcomed with open arms by traditional VCs either.
Yeah. Is that one for Mary or Sandra or Aoife? I'm wondering who'd like to jump in on that?
I'm happy to just really quickly say what I think. I founded Learning Pool with a male co-founder. It never caused us any issues at all. I actually think it's really beneficial, particularly in the early days when you're selling, because it allows your customer base to have preferences, like if maybe they like talking to men or maybe they like talking to women. In terms of investment, really surprised that you're having that experience, and I would suggest that you're perhaps not talking to the right investors, and you should cast your net a little bit wider, would be my advice.
And would anyone else like to come in on that? Perhaps you don't have the same experience of having a male-female dynamic, but maybe some of our Sandra, yeah.
Yeah, Sandra here. So we're 3 co-founders. So there's myself, Deborah, and Arthur. We have 9 nationalities across the team. We're kind of 60-40 female male across the organization. And I would agree with Mary. I think you're probably speaking to the wrong investors, and it goes back to the point around find a place that you're welcome. Very unusual, I have to say, to hear that. Because generally the programs that I've found that they're looking for women-led businesses, it's very rarely that I've ever heard them say it has to be completely 100% women, because as long as you have the female founder, usually that means that you comply and you get access. So I would say probably check where you're looking.
And also we had a question from Catherine Muldoon to everyone. What one change in society would the panel like to see that would change the female founder landscape? I think we've hit on that, but if anyone wants to come in on that again, they're more than welcome. Is there anything that everyone would like it to really, I suppose, if we were having a call to action for today, what they would like to take away from today, what has to be achieved? And I'm just going to ask everyone very quickly, what do you want to come out of today's event? Because we definitely have visibility in the promotional campaign and here today. We've also shared stories and given very high level, free strategic advice to female founders. And also we've networked in a community, and hopefully we'll do it in person soon. So what would you like to come out of today? And I'm going to start with you, Sandra. What would you like to come out today, very briefly?
So Martina, just looking at the Scale Ireland research report, for me, I was actually shocked to see that 46% of businesses have no senior female staff. As you know, we're 51% of the population. We are not a diversity characteristic, right? We're 51%. I think that change needs to come from the funders. So if we had funders, making targets or making decisions around that gender balanced in their funding and their decision making, I think that would be a paradigm shift in supporting women businesses in Ireland.
And as Bill Lau said recently from SOSV, it makes business sense as well. We're also moving along there.
To Michelle. Michelle, what would you like to see change?
I would challenge companies to look at the roles of influence and see how many of them and what the percentage of them are diverse. From a gender perspective, especially with tech companies, it's really important that we have women making decisions and influencing the direction of our product. That is, for, as I said, a world that's 50%, or I think Sandra said 51% women. We need to have women in roles of influence.
Okay, and then moving on to Mary. Mary, what would you want to come out of today? Because we do this for a reason. We want to promote women in startups. So what would that mean to you?
So Martina, I was going to go with improving diversity in recruitment, but Sandra and Michelle have covered that off so admirably that instead I'm going to go back to my original point, which is about women backing women. This is about breaking the bias, International Women's Day this year. So I would urge all of you, we will have something to release very soon on what we're doing. We're going to make it more affordable for women to invest in other women founders. So please do go to the Awaken Angels website and sign up, register your interest, and we'll be back to you all.
Heather, what would you like to see come out of today?
I hope that like what comes out of today is that more young women feel inspired and encouraged to go and start their own startup. Like I think what everyone has said here today is that you just need to reach out, and that there actually is a kind of incredible support network there. You just need to kind of find your space. So yeah, I hope more young women feel inspired to start their own startups.
And here to that, Aoife, what would you see like to come out of your participation today and on this event?
I'd agree with what Sandra and Mary have said earlier there, and Heather as well, obviously. I think, you know, there's a drive with investors and funders now to look at the whole ESG and you know, sustainability and so on. And, you know, we've seen checklists and so on that they use for scoring founders when you're pitching and so on. It would be nice if similar checklists were developed that supported, you know, the points that have been made earlier in terms of diversity and females being at that senior leadership table and senior management, or even board representatives within companies and across the workforce as well. So maybe, you know, I'm just thinking, is that something that can be developed, that can be, you know, potentially proposed to funders as being something they could use in a similar way to the way that they're using sustainability checklists and environmental type checklists and so on.
Really actionable suggestions there. Radine, we'll come to you finally for what you think we can take from today.
Great. Right, I'll round it up. Follow that. I think actually Sandra hit it at the top of the hour. What she's doing around evidence-based approach to why diversity and inclusion is important that's the key to the door. And I think that's really important to note. Second thing really is that today, if everyone walks away and says, I found the front door to a national network through, you know, Awaken Hub, through the Irish Tech Network, through NDRC, through RDI Hub, great. And they're all connected in the back end. We're all talking to each other all the time anyway. I think third and most important is females, backing females. Mary is right. There's not enough female angels. I, for one, I'm going to sign up. I have female angels that I know will be interested in getting involved. And if we can create that safe environment for female founders to be backed by like previous entrepreneurs or just female angels, I think that'd be huge, because we all want to support each other.
And can I just thank everyone here today, because you have put the spotlight on the issue, but you also have supported women in the sector in a very important and practical way by giving and imparting your advice and your experiences, and also lifting people who may be going through experiences that you've gone through, and you've imparted your advice in a real, you know, practical way. And we really appreciate your time today, because this in itself is an important network and way of tackling that. So thanks to all our audience also for attending. And we'd also like to thank Meta, Intertrade Ireland and Martins & Meyer for supporting us today. And I also just want to say on Intertrade Ireland, their VC conference is coming up on the afternoon of the 14th and the morning of the 15th of March. It's an online event. It's free to participate. They have 22 startups who've raised 1.2 billion collectively between them, including 4 unicorns, so it's not to be missed. And apart from their conference, Intertrade Ireland's Funding for Growth team delivered the Seed Corn Investor Readiness competition, which is important to founders, their monthly equity advisory clinics, their business planning workshops, as well as their seed finance workshops and much more. So I'd encourage you to engage with Intertrade Ireland on that, because they do provide valuable support. Also, I want to thank our team, because this event came very quickly after our regional startup summit, and that took an awful lot of effort for a small team that is scaling itself. So I want to thank Sheila, Dave, Niamh, Luke, and also Sinead Marnan, who is our events planner for this event, because everything ran so smoothly. And a big thanks to Dogpatch Labs for hosting us again today. And also, just a leaving thought for myself is that, obviously, first of all, I want you to join Scale Ireland, be part of our community, and we welcome male and female members. But also, so many people have noted to me our promotion campaign, and it was so unusual to see so many women, so many leaders within the community being promoted. And I'd like to see the day where it's not a big event and where it's just the norm. And maybe we can do that in person at another time. Thank you all for joining us, and to all our guest speakers. Thank you.